So in this video, I'm going to quickly go through all of the different blood vessels that you'll need to know for the cranial and thoracic cavities. And so to start off, we're going to look at the arteries that you'll need to be able to identify. So this is how I draw out all of the different arteries that you need to know. I do this anytime that I want to learn a pattern or an orientation of different structures. That way I can draw out the relative structure, I can know where I'm supposed to look in the specific cavity for these different blood vessels, and I have different context clues to help me figure things out. So for these arteries, we'll just go ahead and start off. The first thing that I do is draw out my heart, and then I immediately draw my aorta. So this you could call the aorta or the aortic arch. And I immediately have it plunged downward towards my thoracic cavity, or the rest of my thoracic cavity, and then down to the abdominal. So here's our thoracic aorta. Then the first branch coming off of that aorta is the left subclavian artery. I was about to say vein, but it's the left subclavian artery. So it's going to be one of the two projections coming off of this aortic arch in the Mink. So in the human heart, or off of the human aorta, we'd have three branches, but for here in the Mink, we only have the two. So the first one, again, left subclavian artery, running up to the axillary region or the armpit and heading out under the left arm of the Mink. Then the secondary branch coming off of the aorta is going to be our brachiocephalic artery. And so this brachiocephalic artery is going to serve everything heading up to the head, that's the cephalic part of the name, and it's going to serve our right arm, the brachio part of that name. So this region, before there's any divergence, we'd call that the brachiocephalic region. The first structure to come off of that would be our left common carotid artery, which is going to run up along the left side of the trachea, and this right here is our trachea. Then we'd have our right common carotid, and then finally we'd wrap up all of these different arteries with our right subclavian, which again is going to that axillary region and then out to the arm of the Mink. So if you worry about being able to translate this information as it's depicted in a diagram into finding those blood vessels in an actual Mink, then I would strongly suggest going to page 60, look at that glare, page 63 of your lab manual. Page 63 has a great photo of a dissected Mink, and then page 62, which is over here, has another diagram that you could look at and mimic drawing. So this one's really good for being able to see how those arteries wrap around and kind of orient themselves around the trachea and come off of the aorta, and where they lie in the cranial and thoracic cavities. So now we're going to look at our veins running through the cranial and thoracic cavities. Before we look at this diagram, I just want to point out that there are some excellent pictographs or pictures of the dissection of the Mink on page 60 in your lab manual, and specifically it shows your azygos vein right here. It's kind of hard to find the azygos in your Mink sometimes, so this photo is really helpful to study. And then on page 59, you can see this really nice diagram that they've drawn out, and again, they show the azygos. Okay, so back to this drawing. To start off, I depict my heart, and then I draw the two major vessels that are going to be running into that right atrium. So coming from this inferior position, I have the caudal vena cava, and then coming from the top, I have my cranial vena cava. The next vessel that I draw is the azygos vein right here. And I like to put it coming off of the right side of the heart, because that reminds me that when I'm looking for this either on the human or on the Mink, I need to be looking on the right side of this thoracic region. And then we have these little lines that I've drawn off just to represent little veins that would be draining blood away from your ribs. So again, this azygos vein is coming on that right side, and it's going to be draining blood that's coming from the external wall of your thoracic cavity. So it'd be draining blood this way. Off of my cranial vena cava, I've got my subclavian veins. Here's my left and my right. Right above that, and a little bit smaller, are my external jugular veins, again left and right. And then running right alongside of the trachea, I have my internal jugular veins, left and right. And right next to it, I drew this little yellow structure, and that was just to represent the cranial nerve number 10, which is the vagus nerve. Just remember that you'd have these little bundles of the common carotid, the internal jugular veins, and the the vagus nerves running alongside of this trachea on either side. So there's the trachea, the heart, and all of the major blood vessels that you'll need to know, or all of the major veins that you'll need to know.